Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video, we're checking out the Nexigo Iris 4K webcam. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, Nexigo sent me this Iris webcam for a fair and honest review, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. This camera's claim to fame is that it has the largest sensor ever in a webcam. It is using a Sony Starvis sensor, it's got multiple view modes, AI-powered auto tracking and framing, and an on-screen display menu and flash memory. There's also a remote control to control this thing. Taking a look inside the box, the first thing I see is the back of the camera and the remote control. In the top portion of the box, we've got a quick start guide and an instruction manual. If you're like me and like to really take a look at the specs, feel free to pause the video and, well, read up on the specs. They're all listed right here. Surprisingly, the remote itself is fairly robust for a webcam. There's a ton of buttons on here and I can't wait to see what they all do. The remote takes AAA batteries that aren't included. At the very bottom of the package, we have the USB cable, which is fairly long, and it's a USB-B type connection. This is the exact same connector cable as you'd find on a printer. And interestingly enough, there's also a USB to USB-C connector. And the last thing in the box, probably the most important thing, is the Nexigo Iris. This camera does come with a lens cover, and the lens cover pops off. It's a very weird lens cover overall. But here is the camera in all of its glory. The camera overall is pretty wide and pretty chunky. On the sides of the camera, there aren't any connections, there's just these cover plates. On the back of the camera, we have our USB-B port as well as the HDMI out. And on the bottom of the camera, we have the built-in monitor mount. Now you can use this monitor mount to set the webcam on top of a monitor, or you can use the threaded bit on the bottom to attach this to something like a tripod. The monitor mount will allow you to tilt the camera up and down, but it won't go side to side at all. It is fixed into place. Now, as far as I know, the Nexigo Iris is completely plug and play. To get this up and running, all I did was plug it into my computer and that's about it. You're looking at me right now through the Nexigo Iris. Now, at this point in time, I haven't changed any settings whatsoever. These are the current default settings. And I'm noticing right away here that the light in this is very impressive. The only lights I have on right now are just the lights above me. I don't have my standard YouTube filming lights on. And I'm also noticing the field of view on this is extremely wide and it doesn't really fisheye very much at all. Now I'm going to be testing this webcam out in a number of different scenarios. We'll take a look at 4K at 30 frames per second and 1080p at 60 frames a second. Truth be told, if you're moving around quite a bit, you'll probably want to do 1080p at 60 frames a second. So before I go tinkering around with the settings to try to get the best picture possible, let's take a look at what the remote can do. I'm going to use the auto framing setting, and that is the button on the top left-hand corner here, just under the power button. And you can see with the on-screen display that auto framing is now on. And if I zoom in, it should automatically zoom in on myself as I move around the camera just a little bit. So the auto framing on this one is actually pretty good. And to turn it off, I just have to press the button again and it lets me know that the auto framing is off. And you can zoom in and zoom out just on the controller here. And then you can control the camera with the arrows. I actually really like this. It's a really great feature. I would think if you're in a meeting or trying to highlight a bunch of different people or a specific person, well, this might be a great way to do it. Now, if you are wondering about the numbers on this remote, because there aren't really any channels on the webcam, these are for presets. So you can set up different presets and based on the situation, you can hit a preset and, well, load it up. So let's take a quick look at the main menu of this webcam and see what options are available. Under Setup, it says Video Style, Meeting Mode, Mic Audio, Flip On-Screen Display Menu, EPTZ Level, and USB Mode. Now, USB mode is bulk. There is also ISOC. I would recommend keeping this one in bulk. The next option here is Onboard AI. So we have auto framing, auto tracking, and facial enhancement. Let's turn on facial enhancement. And wow, that really cranked up the contrast, and I am noticing quite a bit of flickering. So I'm not necessarily liking this facial enhancement right now. I'm noticing a ton of flickering, which could get very tiring on the eyes very quickly. I'll turn this one off. The third option in the menu is exposure. We've got auto mode, shutter priority mode, as well as brightness priority mode. And you can configure each individual mode if you'd like. I'm going to just check out auto here, and I can turn on backlight comp if I want, and I don't really need to do that. That is extremely bright, so I'm just going to turn that one off. The next menu item here is color. So under color, the white balance mode is by default set to auto, and you can configure individual settings in here. You can flip it over to manual, calibration mode, or even custom, and adjust the color temperature to the way you see fit. I'm just going to keep mine on auto here just to start. Moving down the list, and we've got image, and we can adjust a ton of things in here. Interestingly enough, I see two different modes. Low light mode, which is set to off, as well as HDR, which is set to off. I'm going to turn on HDR and go from there. Now, obviously, by enabling high dynamic range, the colors do change quite a bit, and I am noticing a bit of a halo effect, I think, from the lights above the camera, and that is just the standard lights I have in this room. The next option here is HDMI video format. By default, HDMI is set to off. You can turn it on and go all the way up to 4K 30. I'm just going to leave it at off because I'm not testing that out in this video. I'm really focused on the video quality overall. Under information, it lets you know your latest firmware, the HDMI resolution, and so on and so forth. And if you screw any settings up, you can just click Restore Defaults. Now under Setup, it is set to Video Style Meeting Mode. I can change that to Streaming Mode here, Low Light Mode, and that's it. So we've got Meeting Mode, Streaming Mode, and Low Light Mode. Personally here, meeting mode seems to be the best. I'm going to try low light mode out though once I turn the lights off. Now, one thing I want to point out, I didn't notice anywhere in the main menu to change the resolution or the frame rate. So by default, I'm guessing we're at, it looks, I want to say maybe looking at the motion here. Yeah, that's 30 frames a second. So it looks like we're sitting at 4K 30 frames per second, but I could be wrong. So at this point in time, I use the software on my computer to manually force this camera into 1080p and 60 frames per second. And I noticed right away that the quality of the video dropped significantly, which does make sense going from 4K to 1080p. And the frame rate here, yeah, the frame rate does look to be 60 frames per second. So I guess that one gets a thumbs up. But I'm a little bit disappointed at the overall quality here at 1080p on this camera. And now I'm back at 4K, so I just undid the settings I just did on my computer, which was really simple and straightforward if you know what you're doing. I'm a little bit bummed that you can't do this manually on the camera unless I miss something. So let's move on and have some fun with some comparisons. At this point in time, you're looking at me through the OBSBot Meet 4K, another 4K web camera. This one has a few features similar to the Nexigo, but it doesn't have this awesome remote. And the sensor on this one is apparently a little bit smaller. These are the default settings for the camera. And just for funsies, here's the Logitech StreamCam up and running. Now this is running at 1080p 60 frames per second, which is pushing the camera to its limits. And these are the default settings. I haven't turned on my YouTube lights yet, and we'll do that in just a minute after taking a look at the low light settings. All right, so here are all three cameras up and running. This one here is the OBSBot Meet 4K. This one here is the Logitech StreamCam. And this one here is the Nexigo Iris. Now at this point in time, I've gone on ahead and turned off every single light in my room. The only thing that's illuminating me right now are the computer monitors sitting in front of me. And this is where the sensor in the Nexigo Iris, I think, is doing amazing work. Having that larger sensor is really bringing out the picture in low light. I can barely see myself on the Logitech StreamCam. On the OBSBot Meet, I'm a little bit washed out. You can see some noise in the picture and the camera really struggling. And on the Nexigo Iris, I think it's doing a fantastic job, and I haven't even switched it into low light mode yet. So let's go on ahead and flip that over. I've flipped over to streaming mode, and now we're in low light mode. And wow, the meeting mode is probably the way to go again here. That low light mode is absolutely atrocious. I don't really think this is feasible at all. The frame rate's pretty good, but at the same time you lose all of the picture. I can't even see myself. So I'm just going to keep this in meeting mode and see how things go. At this point in time, I've gone on ahead and turned on my YouTube lights. And remember that all of these cameras are still at default settings. I haven't configured anything just yet. I'm noticing right away that the OBSBot Meet is, well, I'm a little bit pink. I'm a little bit pink in the Logitech StreamCam as well. And the saturation on the Nexigo Iris seems pretty heavy. But I think the Nexigo Iris wins this round on default settings. I think it looks pretty acceptable. Now I do have one ring light in front of my face, and I'm going to turn that one off just to see what happens. So turning that off, and It changes the illumination on my face just a little bit. I can actually change the color on that light and see what happens when I change color. Again, it's not really doing a whole lot on either camera, so I might have to try to manually configure things. But before I do that, I'm going to go on ahead and turn down the OBSBot Meet and Nexigo Iris to 1080p at 60 frames a second to match the stream cam. So as of right now, all three cameras are running at 1080p and 60 frames per second. And at this frame rate and resolution, the Logitech stream cam is completely maxed out. I also noticed there was a bit of flickering on my shirt before with the Logitech stream cam. And that's because I forgot to take the green screen filter off. So, well, I've taken that filter off and this is how the camera looks overall. What I'm going to do now is try to color correct these and make these more accurate to real life. Now at this point in time, I've spent about 5 minutes on each camera trying to get the picture as close to real life as possible. Now pictures will vary from screen to screen and device to device. So what I'm seeing might not be what you're seeing, and that is absolutely okay. But just let me know in the comments below which one you think looks the best. We have the Nexigo Iris, the OBSBot Meet 4K, and the Logitech Stream Cam. So let's go on ahead and check out the built-in microphone for all three of these cameras. Throughout the video so far, you've been listening to me through the Electro Voice RE20, the standard mic I use on this channel. First up, we're going to switch over to the Logitech Stream Cam. So here is the internal microphone for the Logitech Stream Cam. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, and 3. Now you're listening to me through the built-in microphone on the OBSBot Meet 4K. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, and 3. Now you're listening to me through the built-in microphone on the Nexigo Iris. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, and 3. So let's get into what I like, what I don't like, and whether or not I'd recommend the Nexigo Iris. And we'll start out here with what I like. First and foremost, I like the remote. I like the on-screen display. It makes configuring the camera very easy. You can configure it manually via software if you'd like, or you can just dive right into it with the remote, which is the preferred way. I really like the performance of this camera in low light settings and also the frame rate at 4K. You're looking at me right now at 4K, and although it's not 60 frames a second, the frame rate on this one isn't struggling as bad as the OBSBot was. I like that the camera is basically plug and play. You don't really have to worry about anything, and the controls on the remote are also pretty cool to zoom in and zoom out. And the field of view on this thing is ridiculously good. Now moving into my dislikes about this camera. The first thing I don't like is the overall size of it. This camera is massive. Yes, you can tilt it up and down, but you can't pivot it from left to right on this mount. The mount doesn't flex. And that will be a problem if you're trying to mount this on a monitor, and if the monitor isn't set squarely towards you and you're trying to pivot it, well, you really can't. You're going to have to get a tripod for this. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the different modes on this camera. It's nice to have them, but at the same time here, streamer mode I found is not really that great, and low light mode performed worse than meeting mode did in low light settings, which is the opposite of what I'd expect. I also didn't like the fact that I couldn't change the resolution or the frame rate via the remote. If you can, maybe I just missed it. Hopefully that's the case. But I went through the menu and I didn't see the option to change the camera resolution or frame rate. Yes, the HDMI out, but I'm not using the HDMI out. I'm using the webcam right now. And the privacy shutter on this one, it's nice to have it. It's super unfortunate that it's not attached to the camera. Something like this would be very easy to lose. So before I go on ahead and give my overall recommendation, let's take a look at the price. As it stands right now, the Nexigo Iris is priced at $250. The OBSBot Meet 4K is priced at $200. And the Logitech Stream Cam is priced at $139.99. So at $250, would I recommend the Nexigo Iris? And the answer here is yes and no. No, if you're looking for just a cheap and cheerful webcam, the Nexigo Iris is priced extremely high. However, if you are using the Iris in an office setting, with multiple people using it, multiple locations, and possibly multiple configurations, then absolutely yes. I mean, it's got a remote, it's easy to use, easy to control, and it's got presets you can save. This is very convenient. On top of that, in low light settings, the Nexigo Iris performed extremely well thanks to its pretty good sensor for webcams. And I'm also noticing at 4K 30 here, the Nexigo Iris frame rate is better than the 4K 30 frame rate on the OBSBot Meet 4K. But ultimately, I'll leave the overall recommendation up to you. Were you happy with the picture? Did you like the sound of it? Which camera out of these three did you like the best? Let me know in the comments below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. Huge shout out to Nexigo for providing this Iris for a fair and honest review. Let me know your thoughts about the Nexigo Iris in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.